Tara.
I'm Ryan.
We love Disney movies.
So we decided to watch them all, from Snow White
to Frozen 2 and beyond. Each episode will watch a different Walt Disney Animated Studios film and tell you all about it.
Did we like it? Does it hold up? Who's our favorite hero?
Or villain.
We'll give you history and fun facts about each movie.
And sometimes we'll invite our friends to watch along with us.
So put on your tiara
or your evil crown
and join us on our adventure.
This is Tara and Ryan's Princess Diaries. Hello listeners, we are back and today you have just the dynamic duo, me and Ryan. And we are here to discuss Walt Disney's 2004 Home on the Range.
How do you feel going into this one?
I knew nothing about it. I did some research on it. I was super surprised at the voices, and they're people I like for the most part. So I am excited to kind of hear them doing, animated characters and things like that. I have no feelings on this one. I've heard it's not very good.
As far as I've heard, nobody has.
Yeah, I've heard that people either don't care for it or haven't seen it. I'm in the category of I haven't seen it, so I'm kind of open. I'm trying to stay as open-minded as possible. And I'm just here for the experience.
Yes, we're recording this before we do the Brother Bear episode, but I have heard Carley say, our guest on the Brother Bear episode, before that she likes this one. I think she likes all the Disney ones.
Well, it also depends. I know she's a bit younger than us. It depends when you grew up. If this is the age you grew up of Disney movies, you're going to have a different connection because these are your movies, right? Aladdin and the Renaissance they came out when we were growing up, right? So I think that kind of determines your connections and your nostalgia to stuff.
Do you have any remembrance of this at all? When it came out?
No, I don't remember seeing anything for it. I don't remember. It was 2004, so I was in college. I was a sophomore, I guess. I was either freshman or a sophomore in college, and I don't recall anything about it, but I will say I also didn't really follow Disney
at this time. Yeah.
I was aware things were happening, but I didn't really go to the movies much at all during my college years. I probably went to a handful of stuff.
I think I remember this coming out and just not even really thinking ooh boy, Disney is. I was just this looks bad.
Yeah.
I remember it was, this is the time, and I keep talking about we're now in the post-Shrek world. And it's this.
Well, go ahead.
Well, I remember the marketing for it. I was looking up something today. It was Bust a Moo. And it was really trying hard to do that kind of Shrekky marketing and not really the Disney classic. Not really billing it as Disney classic. Because it's also not a fairy tale. It's also all this stuff.
It's kind of based on the Pied Piper, but they changed a lot of that, I read.
Well, it has a story of what it was originally It was built out of another story they wrote. So I don't know. I mean, I think it has a Pied Piper element.
Yeah, I think the villain kept the Pied Piper part because he yodels, which brings all the cows.
Yes.
I was reading about that, Slim. But what I will say too is I read one or two things that I was oh, that's not Disney, or Disney doesn't do that. Talking about the post-Shrek era, and one of those things was it earned a PG rating for the line about udders. So Maggie, Roseanne Barr's character, has a line that says, "Yeah, they're real. Quit staring." And that to me seems like more humor of DreamWorks, of Shrek, than it does of Disney. And then there was one other line that I found interesting that they took a jab at DreamWorks, and I'm oh, that doesn't really seem like Disney usually doesn't do stuff like that in their dialogue. They don't
follow trends.
Yeah, and so again, it's Maggie's character, it's Roseanne Barr's character again. She has a line that says "Stallion of Cimarron," and it was supposed to be referring to DreamWorks film Spirit, the Stallion of Cimarron.
Yes.
So again, I read those two quotes, and I was just well, that's really interesting because up to this point, Disney hasn't really done anything like that. Whereas DreamWorks, I feel like you said, they were very clearly making fun of Michael Eisner and things like that with Shrek. So it is interesting that Disney's, I guess, trying their hand at doing that a little bit.
At cynical humor, which isn't as...
was never their... It didn't seem like it was their strong point. And when I read those facts, I was it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I was like, oh, I'm not used to Disney doing that, I guess.
We're also like, Brother Bear will probably broach this too in this one. These are the two movies after Treasure Planet, which was the big, like, these two movies are kind of like, Treasure Planet puts kind of the nail in Disney's hand animation coffin, but like these are too far along.
And this is the last hand animated film until Princess and the Frog in 2009. And it is because I read numbers, you'll have to tell me if it's accurate, but I read that it grossed $145.5 million at box office, and I read that it didn't make back, it earned less than half of the estimated production costs.
Really? So the production costs on this were it's probably marketing and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm sure it says estimated, so I don't know. So I read...
Yeah, it says here, it says here budget 110, and it says box office 145, so that's barely making back its money.
Yeah, and then depending
that's not
on
including
how much...
marketing, anything like that, which I'm sure they marketed the heck out of this.
So it was poorly received by critics and
Yes.
audiences, and so much so that they fired the art director. His name was Michael Giamo. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Giamo, but he was fired from Disney after this came out because of how poorly it did.
So that's interesting, and I'm going to shift a little bit because I will say, while I don't know if I've got thoughts on how I'm going to take this movie, but I will tell you, I truly appreciate the making of, because the making of this one starts off and it's like, dun, 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 dun. It's not that, but it's doing like a Western thing. It's like starring the director. So like everything I look for in these, it did right at the beginning. It goes, here's the supervising animators for the the 3 cows, and here's this, and I was like, oh, thank you for doing so much of my work for me.
Yeah.
Home on the Range making of.
Well, and it was described as a Western comedy musical.
Yes.
Is how I read it. It also received a 53% on Rotten Tomato and a 50% on Metacritic. I know now, like, I'm starting to notice Metacritic percentages, so I may have noticed them before and just not said them. I don't know if you want to say what the top movies of 2004 were.
Yes, I went to that.
It was also the final feature film, animated feature film, to use the Disney CAP system, which started back with, was that Rescuers Down Under? Mm-hmm. So this is the last film to use that system as well.
Oh, so Princess and the Frog didn't use it?
That's what
interesting.
That's what I read. Obviously, when we get to Princess and the Frog, sometimes we have contradicting facts along the way, but that was what I had read.
So the top 3 movies I have here: Shrek 2, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, and Spider-Man 2, the best Spider-Man movie and the best Harry Potter movie. Followed at number 4 by The Incredibles, and followed at number 6. Oh no, that's The Day After Tomorrow. I was thinking Tomorrow Never Dies, so that's not
not a
James Bond movie. Shrek 2 making almost $1 billion, so for a long time, like one of the highest grossing movies.
That probably didn't help Home on the Range, because they were probably comparing numbers to look at what Shrek made and look at what we made.
And after this is when Disney animation shifts to CGI. They do Chicken Little, Bolt, Tangled eventually, all that stuff.
Tangled doesn't come out until 2010, so that's after Princess and the Frog.
Well, I think they had it as a hand animated. We'll go more into our Tangled episode, but I think this is where they say this needs to be no longer a Disney hand animated movie.
Oh, interesting.
Like they shift to that. That's something I heard. But so this originally started as a movie called Sweating Bullets.
Yes, I read about this, but I figured you'd have it, so I didn't write it down.
What did you read? Because I heard in another podcast some information that I wasn't able to what's the word I'm looking for? Validate or confirm on the thing I was watching. I understand why. What do you know about Sweating Bullets?
I'll be honest. I glazed over it because I figured you would have the information, so I didn't really retain it.
So the rumor at some point was that it was a movie about sentient bullets.
Oh, interesting.
And then they decided they didn't want the movie to that was a big component of it, and they didn't. It's a Disney movie, so they didn't want it to be like super about guns. What they said in the documentary was that it was about a kind of a greenhorn cowboy coming to a ghost town, and Slim was still the bad guy at that point.
Okay.
But it was at one point it was like a male kind of East Coast guy coming and trying to be a cowboy, and then it was like a kid, a young girl, and then it became like this really adorable picture of like a baby longhorn. So it's this little like thing with like giant horns.
I would love a longhorn film
I
just
think-
because I fell in love with longhorns out here in Texas.
I think that's where it eventually became like, well, what if we kind of switch this on set? There's a lot of like switching Western tropes, you know, it's like the cows are the heroes, not the cowboys.
Yeah.
It's 3 women taking charge, you know, which is something that some of the producers said they really liked about this. They called it Charlie's Angels with Cows.
Oh, that's fun.
There's something to look out for. I want to talk about while we're watching this. Maggie, I don't know, like, this is hard to say because there's a little bit of a watching the documentary, like, you know what this means because you've seen the movie.
Yes.
I haven't seen the movie. But Maggie apparently in this movie, like, comes to the dairy farm at a certain point.
And that's Roseanne Barr's character.
Roseanne Barr's character. I'll go into that in a sec. And she's, like, new to the farm. But originally she was in the farm from the beginning. And they kind of had to, like, late into production, make some changes and redo some stuff. And so there's scenes, like, there's a scene where they're all, like, dancing on the farm. And there's, like, a kind of a blank space in the middle.
Yeah.
And that's where Maggie was supposed to be dancing around. So it's, like, things like that where they took her out. This, one of the things, like, looking at this is, like, why it didn't work well. Like, they're grabbing, like, Roseanne Barr, Cuba Gooding Jr.,
Randy Quaid.
It's all people whose prime, like, they're kind of on their down slope. Like, I think they hired him back when they were looking at it in the late 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And then it took till 2004 to come out. I can see why people, like, in 2004, I don't think anyone was like, a Roseanne Barr movie.
Yeah,
like, you know, and I maybe she fits the character, we'll have to see here, but that's just, to me, one more reason maybe why this didn't do so well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have...
I feel like there's not a whole lot for this.
I have some more stuff. Some stuff about the villain and some things to look out for.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a goofy holler to listen for when Junior, and we don't know the characters because we've not seen it, but Junior falls down an elevator shaft. So we'll have to listen for a goofy
An
holler
elevator?
there.
Is it a mine shaft?
It said an elevator shaft, but I would have assumed it was a mine shaft, so I don't know.
Yeah,
and
it might be.
because we've not seen it, I left how it was worded in there. But yeah, I was like, maybe that wasn't the right word. Slim's villain song, in one melody, he yodels the William Tell Overture. So something else to listen out for. And I was reading from the villain's book that I've shared on the Facebook page that I have. Randy Quaid is quoted in there when they're describing Slim. He would say, I would start yodeling, and then they had very gifted yodelers who would come in, and it's such a smooth transition from my voice to theirs.
So I've watched this song. I've heard it because, like, anytime you find a Disney villains list, it's on it, and I'm like, because it's, you know, like, I feel like a lot of the ones I haven't
never
seen
heard
don't.
it.
Yes, well, you're gonna like it. I'm a little upset that you know about him being yodeling, because that's kind of, I think, the gimmick is he's like the best cattle wrestler, and then you think he's gonna like shoot the cows, but his gun is actually a guitar.
Oh,
and he's
that's
like,
fun.
I yodel, like, and then he does that. And he had 2 stunt yodelers, is how they refer to it in the thing.
Oh, interesting.
And they're like, Randy Quaid was really up for it because Randy Quaid was like, oh, I can't really sing, like, and he's like, he would try, but it is pretty smooth transition. It's more, it's less of this doesn't sound like Randy Quaid yodeling as the dissonance in your brain of going, I know Randy Quaid can't yodel this well.
Yeah.
There's no way.
There's also a picture that I will post when we release this episode from the villain's book of Randy Quaid with headphones on, like mouth open, like as he's yodeling. So
he seemed to be like Randy Quaid in the last few years we've discovered he's an odd individual.
We have?
Oh, okay.
Well, we can take this off the podcast if you want.
We'll take it off, but he's done. It's a longer thing to go into. Look up Randy Quaid, folks, if you want to go into this.
Can you just tell me right now?
Well, but so he looked like he was having just like a ball doing this role. And whatever.
I was excited when I heard his voice just because I love him from Christmas Vacation.
Did you see Steve Buscemi's in this?
Yes, yeah, I saw that as well.
They literally like designed his character to look like him and then showed it to him. He goes, "Oh yeah, I'll do it." He's
That's
like in
great.
it for a cameo. It's not very long.
Well, I also read that there's another group of villains called the Willy Brothers, and I don't know anything about them, and there wasn't anything listed in the villains book, but they're mentioned in the index because
they're like his henchmen.
Okay.
I think they were like a early from our henchman bracket. They were on there for a while, but they're all voiced by the same guy who's their animator.
Oh, that's cool.
Sam Levine.
I also was reading that this is Alan Menken's only project from Disney in the post-Renaissance, aka what has been called the Second Dark Age. And then his next project is Tangled in 2010. So he works on this in 2004, and then I read he works on Tangled in 2010.
So I got a few Alan Menken things. First of all, the whole pitch of this making of is they're hanging out at a dude ranch telling stories about making the film, and Alan Menken, they're around a fire, and Alan Menken pulls a guitar and is playing the songs from the movies, and then they'll go into something about the song.
Yeah.
Before we get to Alan Menken real quick, they went on a cattle drive in Wyoming to prepare for this.
That's great.
Like City Slickers-esque cattle drive. The backgrounds, the idea of the backgrounds came from that, how colorful they were from this, and they also studied Johnny Appleseed and Pecos Bill. Went back and looked at the old ones to kind of get inspiration.
That's awesome that they revisited, previous animation that they had done. That's kind of cool.
So there's a song on here. So first of all, there's a couple songs done by, there's Little Patch of Heaven, which is sang by Katie Lang. I don't know if it's sung by her in the movie or like kind of in the credits. Mm-hmm. Same thing with a song called Will the Sun Ever Shine Again by Bonnie Raitt.
Oh.
Which sounds really good, and they got a lot of good feedback. He wrote it. This is kind of a disappointing story because he wrote it as he referred to it as a balm, BALM, for 9/11.
Oh.
Because like he kind of wrote it after that. And it's this idea of like, so that's something when you watch this to kind of think of the words and that kind of idea. And he said he was getting a lot of calls when it started going around the studio, everyone being like, this is really powerful and blah, blah, blah. And it's just, I don't know if truly I believe it's a powerful song or not because I haven't heard it.
Yeah.
But it's
and this
kind
is
of
the Bonnie Raitt song?
The Bonnie Raitt song.
Okay.
I don't know if I don't know if she sings it in the movie or whatever, but it's during a time when everyone's really like sad in the movie. But it would, I don't know, it feels, a little disappointing that his, creative outlet for feelings of a national tragedy ended up in this, like, kind of got buried in this movie.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. So this is, to me, is a good way to transition into, I'm kind of think I might like this movie.
Like I said, I'm going in open-minded. I don't want to say, oh, I'm not going to like it or I am going to like it. I just want to go in as truly a blank slate. And I think both of us are on the same page with that.
I'm going in with the lowest of expectations because I've spent so much time going, Home on the Range is coming. Mm-hmm. We're getting ready for Home on the Range. Home on the Range. And then I started watching the making of, and I was just like, some of this looks charming. Mm-hmm. Like, we'll see if it ends up on. So now I'm at the thing of like, I think I'm going with such low expectations that this movie can only
surpass
the worst it could do is meet my expectations. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I'll just be like, yeah, and it wasn't very good.
Well, before we wrap up,
oh, okay, sorry.
I have a trivia question for you. I want to see if you can name them all.
Ooh, okay.
This is the fifth film
featuring cows.
Focus on domestic animals. Name the other four.
Do dogs count as domestic animals?
Yes.
Okay, so Lady and the Tramp, 101 Dalmatians. Mm-hmm. Which number is this? This is the fourth?
This is the fifth. So
the
you have
fifth, so I have two more of domestic that came out
that are animated.
Do llamas count as domestic?
It's not llamas.
I mean, okay, but let's just say that they are herding the llamas.
Think about the other most popular domestic animal besides a dog.
Oh, the Aristocats.
Yes.
And
you're missing one more.
I'm still going. I think Lynn Prisoner Gru because llamas. They're herding.
Why should I worry?
Oh yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So Oliver and Company.
I did enjoy. There's a scene in the.
I appreciate that you added llamas in there, but they
Well,
did
'cause
not
they're-
consider llamas.
Well, because they're hurting them, like
Mhm,
specific,
mhm.
so they're clearly domesticated in that movie.
Hmm.
There's a lot of they do the Disney like for Lion King we brought in a real lion and
Yes.
we observe the majesty of the jungle. And this one they're like just like tied a cow and they're all like this far, like I'm putting my hand not very far from my face. They're that because they're cows, like they don't have to like a lion. It's like all right, let's get some distance.
Yeah.
The cow, they're like right up on them. I will say there was a line during the talk of the Wyoming cattle drive where one of the animators was like, I never want to see the rear end of a cow again in my life. I never like they were so just over it.
Well, I think it also depends on like how out of your element you are, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If they're coming from never being on a ranch, never being on doing a cattle drive and stuff like that, it must have been a very unique experience.
I mean, I love cows. Like
Yeah.
I think they're like I talk about Lady has a very like cow demeanor sometime where she's just kind of like calm a lot of the time. I like them like the I showed you that is it Crouton the cow who's
I believe
on Twitter,
so, yes,
who's
and
like
on
running
Facebook
around.
too,
I
or
love,
not Facebook, Instagram.
I love. Well, this will be a good time for me to push some weird avenue of YouTube. I love the YouTube videos where it's someone sitting in a field playing an instrument and cows like approach them.
Yes.
Especially when it's like
some of those because
especially
you've sent them to me.
Yes,
They're great.
especially when it's like an odd instrument like a euphonium or something very kind of oddball. I am gonna promote one YouTube video that I don't think is for everyone, but I have found interestingly every once in a while I find someone I know who goes, oh, I also watch this thing. It's so fascinating.
Yeah.
It is not necessarily for kids because it is clinical,
Okay.
but it's called the Hoof GP.
Oh no, I don't. It's them cleaning their hooves.
It's them cleaning their
No,
hoofs
thank you.
and doing like they're shaving them.
It's basically giving them like cow pedicures.
It is, but it's also some of it's like diagnosing issues and that thing.
Yeah, it's safety and stuff. I just don't like watching those.
No,
kinds of
you don't like
things.
those. I like watching some clinical videos
No,
on
thank you.
YouTube every once in a while. But for some reason, it's always very satisfying to see like this cow came up and it was limping and blah, blah, blah. And we did this and we've started on the road to recovery. They do this thing where they glue like what looks like rubber stoppers to the other. Like if it's their left hoof is bad,
Yeah.
they put to the right one, so they've got like more. They can put more weight on the other one,
Mhm.
and it's just so satisfying to watch these cows get out and take like 2 steps where they think they're gonna limp, and they're like,
Yeah.
oh, and they start
Yeah.
walking.
I feel like I saw in the Animal Kingdom show on Disney Plus, I think they did that with a giraffe. They were trying to
Yes.
work on a giraffe's hooves. I think they have hooves
Yes.
as well. So I've seen that, but yeah, for me, I'm not super interested in that, but I can
But
understand why people are.
Yes, he's also Scottish, so he's like, hello, everyone. And he's like super just.
Is he a vet?
He's specifically, this is the one thing he does. Because sometimes they'll show things, he goes, they need to go to a vet. This is what I can do.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not trained. Like, he's very, very, but he's like got like 1 million subscribers. Like, it does exceptionally well, which is why I find people that they're like, you watch the Hoof GP? I'm like, isn't it weirdly satisfying to watch?
Yeah.
So check that out. Again, it's a little clinical, can be a little graphic sometimes, but if that's the kind of thing you're okay with on YouTube, it's very interesting. But it is also he gets pooped and peed on a lot.
Yeah, I can
because
see
he's
that.
behind them. He's just like
Yeah.
telling someone, all of a sudden it's like, like, and you just see him like dive out of the way, and he's like, oh no. But anyway, do we have anything else we want to say about this?
No,
Are we ready
I
to watch
think-
it? Check it out.
I think on that note, we are going to
That's my line.
Oh yeah, I was about to say your line. Oh my goodness.
Well,
All
you want
right.
to try it? You want to try it? Because you always talk about how hard it is for me to say it.
Well, on that note, listeners, we're gonna take the VHS out of the clamshell and pop it in the VCR.
All right, she did it.
Mic drop.
See you on the other side, listeners. Yodeling? You want to try yodeling? No, let's not do that. It's gonna be very
Yodel-adle-eedle-oo.
okay. That's
No,
pretty good.
let's not do that.
I'm keeping that in. So we're back. Shocking. I liked it.
I thought it was delightful. I thought it was charming. We love Westerns. If you've listened to our Pecos Bill episode, I mean, Ryan loves that. I will say I've come to love Westerns because of Ryan. We watch a lot of different Western style films, and I feel like this gave a lot of that.
I will say, if you like, if a parent went, should I watch Pecos Bill with my kids or this, I'd probably put this first.
I would too.
I think Pecos Bill is
because Pecos Bill has some problems, and we talked about it.
It's problematic,
culturally inappropriate issues.
Yes, and this is pretty good. And there's a couple things, we'll get to it at the end, but I think, like, I would suggest, even though it's PG, that one line about like
that really could have been cut. It kind of is.
No one was mouthing it, so it's not like they could.
Yeah, it kind of is in a weird part of the film right at the beginning.
I think the pacing would have been off a little, but not enough that it was.
Yeah, but it's really
noticeable.
I really don't think it is a true PG film.
No, I think I would be pretty confident in saying you could put this on and walk away. There's a couple scenes where people have guns, but they don't shoot them. They mostly just threaten with them a little bit, but I
really enjoyed it. So I guess
I also don't think it's annoying enough. Like, that was my thing, is I thought it was going to be really like hammy, annoying to watch, right?
Yeah.
Like, that was what I thought was like, kind of like, because it's in that, like, again, like early 2000s era where it's going to be, because there are a lot of like burping jokes and stuff, which are kind of like eye rolly, but that didn't really bother me. I mean, Shrek farts, for goodness sakes.
Yeah. Well, and also the other line that I was saying where they had like that dig at Spirit, again, it went by so quick. If you didn't know it was in there, you wouldn't have really put it together. Like, they didn't focus on it.
Yeah. So let's go into what. Do you think there's a bigger surprise we've had? This is up there with Sorcerer's Apprentice, where we were like shockingly like, I would watch this again.
Yeah, I would watch this again. I liked the music. I enjoyed the Western theme. I think that was what I liked the most about it. The colors are beautiful.
Yes.
Anytime that they zoom out and, it's all about this tale of the cows basically going on this adventure to capture Slim to save the farm. And there are so many beautiful landscape shots, and the colors are so vibrant, and there were a lot of things I really liked about it.
Let's do this. I can't get over that I like this movie.
Yeah.
Considering I spent like the year and a half of this podcast going like, Home on the Range is coming up. Like, now I'm like rethinking like Chicken Little and Meet the Robinsons. Like, maybe this isn't going to be like the Slog. I thought this was going to be like the Slog trilogy.
Yeah.
It may turn out to be the Shock trilogy,
Yeah. Well, it opens, and we both loved this. The castle is branded. So it's used like a cattle brand. So that was kind of a real unique spin on opening with the Disney castle, and the coloring is different. And then it opens with the song, which I think, is that the theme song, the Home on the Range kind of theme that comes throughout?
Well, it's hard to say. It's
not the song
Home on the Range, but it's their version of a song called Home on the Range.
It's their theme song to the film, which I like that it was drastically different from the original Home on the Range.
Yes.
I like that it was a fast, upbeat, had that Western feel to it.
That kind of like small orchestra feel with like the strings. What's the song that I feel like on this podcast, they made fun of me for not knowing the Here's the Beef or Beef It's What for Dinner
the Aaron
song.
Copeland, right?
Yes. What episode was that? Was that John Love?
It had to have been a Fantasia episode, right? With Chris?
Yes.
With Chris.
Yeah, either Chris or Madeline. I think I got made fun of that. I didn't know Copeland. I think it was Chris. But it really sounds like dun 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 dun, like really like westerny. It's definitely more of, I like the westerns that are a little rougher and grimmer. This is definitely like the 60s western of like the 10-star like Magnificent Seven type western.
Yeah, and so it opens with that song, and then we start following a one-legged jackrabbit, and he's kind of just having a real tough go of it, and his character is Lucky Jack, and he comes back later on.
Yes, and I like the bit that he's terribly unlucky because he's lost his rabbit's foot.
Yes, yeah, it's a really funny bit. He's like, everybody used to come rub my rabbit's foot. We find that out much later. And so Then there's a cattle herd and the credits. Then the title sequence happens here. So it happens fairly quick. And we find out that Slim is wanted. We see a wanted poster up. So we know he's wanted. He's wanted for $750. This is where I wrote beautiful landscape. So you see it right from the get-go, right from the opening. And then Maggie is kind of the narrator of the story. So Roseanne Barr, she's kind of the main focal point. She's the one who kind of tells the tale, and you follow her story.
Who wasn't nearly as grating as I thought she was
I thought she was going to be too. I thought she was fine.
Yeah.
I actually really enjoyed her.
I will say she's my least favorite of the cows, but she's not like a far third.
Yeah, and also, you know, we now know a lot about Roseanne Barr, but I will say I was a huge fan of the original
show.
Not the Connors. What's the original?
Roseanne.
Roseanne. Sorry, that was a real moment of my wheels turning, being like, "Come on, you know the name of the show." I loved Roseanne, so I kind of brought that nostalgia a little bit hearing her voice.
I don't mean to make fun of you, but I just love the idea of like, what's the name of that show that stars Roseanne?
Roseanne. Yeah, I know. I feel like a complete fool. And I was remembering the
Connors.
Yeah, the Connors, which is
is exactly what that. Which I think NBC wants you to do right now is kind of forget about Roseanne
and focus. I did exactly what they wanted me to do. But anyway, she tells us the tale that Slim and the Willie brothers stole her herd, stole their ranch. We find out that she is a prize-winning cow. She's a show cow, so she was in the barn when all of the other cattle was outside, and her rancher, I don't know if we probably hear his name. I just didn't write it down. He's not
Dixon,
in it very long.
because it's the Dixon Ranch, but I guess his last name
He wakes up with Maggie, not together, but like they go out to out.
He takes real good care of the show cow that she gets to sleep in a bed.
Yeah. But he goes out and they realize all the cows are gone, and we kind of hear from other cows that like it's a scary like ghost story about Slim, right? That he comes in the middle of the night and then like in the morning all the cows are gone. So some people believe in Slim, some people don't, or animals I should say, not people. And so we find out that he has to move. All of his land is being auctioned off and he can no longer afford to care for Maggie, and he's got a sign on his wagon, California or bust. So he's headed out to California. Potentially, did you not see that sign?
No, I'm trying to remember something else because do you remember?
I'm wondering if he's heading out for the gold rush. If he's trying to make money that way, is that around the same time? Do you remember a character
in the movie called Annie?
No.
Okay, well, Annie was played by Texas Governor Ann Richards.
Oh my goodness!
And I got to figure out who that is in this because
she must be one of the farm animals on Little Patch of Heaven.
Yes, so I'm gonna figure out who it was because I for some reason I was waiting for this character to show up called. Oh my gosh, no! She was the saloon.
Oh my
woman
gosh, she was
who like kicked them all out.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
That's hilarious.
I love
okay,
that.
We'll get to that, but I saw that on the thing, and that's why I was like looking for a character named Annie,
or a Democratic governor
of
here
Texas.
for Texas.
Democratic lady governor, the best governor Texas ever had.
Mm-hmm. So we find out.
But so that's why when you said California or bust, I was like, I thought this took place in Texas. So maybe.
Yeah, no, I think it does take place in Texas. I think
leaving.
He's leaving.
Okay.
Yeah, so the sign is.
We're spending way too much time on this sign.
Yeah, but I'm wondering I asked this earlier, but you were focused on Ann Richards. Is the gold rush around this time? Like, would he be heading out to California to try to like reap the benefits of the gold rush?
No, this is like I think 1890s. I think the gold rush is like 1849 because it's the 49ers.
So he's just starting anew in California, I guess. So anyway, he sells. I don't even know that he sells Maggie. I think he just gives Maggie to Pearl.
Yeah, that was what I was wondering.
Yeah, because we never see like money change hands or whatever. And Pearl's like, we'll be happy to take her. And then this is where the song "Little Patch of Heaven." So we get to meet all the farm animals. I got excited. We saw bluebonnets. Bluebonnets are the state flower of Texas. So we were excited to see those mentioned in the song. And you get to know all the personalities of the animals here. There's the grumpy goat, Jeb, and then there's the piglets who are kind of messing with him. There's a pig father. I think they call him father. So I don't know that there's a pig mother, but there is a father. There's some chickens. There's some chicks. There's a rooster. Who's lazy and sleeping, and one of the chicks has kind of taken over the rooster call.
And then the rooster's very proud of him because he's his son.
Yeah. Are there any other animals I'm leaving out? The
There's
other
a
two
duck.
cows, Grace and Mrs. C, Mrs. Calloway. There is a duck.
Who like hangs out with the chickens.
Yeah. And so we meet all those characters. And then Sam and Buck arrive. And Sam is the law. He's like the sheriff. And Buck is the horse. Voiced by Cuba
Gooding Jr.
And they basically give Pearl a bank notice. And they're like, you can't afford to own the farm anymore. It's going to have to be auctioned off if you can't pay. And we find out it's also $750. What she owes, the same amount as what the Wanted.
Very typical.
The kind of ransom for Slim.
Yes, very typical Western storyline. The farm is in danger. We got to do something to help the farm.
Yeah.
And some unlikely character has to go out and become a hero.
Well, and we hear from Pearl that, the harvest was bad and things like that. So it's like typically she is able to keep things going. And then Sam suggests, well, you've got some really great animals here. You could sell off a few of the critters. And you realize that this is her family. Like, it's just Pearl and the animals. And she kicks them off the farm and says, absolutely not. They're my family. And so Maggie kind of comes in very showboaty. She is a show cow.
Yes.
So she's kind of showing off, and she's like rolling apples down her back and like pulling apples from the piglet's ears as if you would a quarter, that kind of a thing.
And Mrs. Calloway is not...
By Dame Judi Dench.
Yes, is not impressed by any of this.
No, because she's the one who rules the farm. She's like the elder of the farm, essentially. And now Maggie has come in and thrown a wrench into that, shook things up. And then the third cow is Grace, who I actually love Grace.
Yes.
I think Grace is a great character.
Grace is probably my favorite.
And her voice?
Jennifer Tilly.
Thank you, yes. I think Grace was my favorite of the three cows, too. Very aloof, very, she's trying to help.
Kind of like Mary from Hocus Pocus.
A
kept
little
being
bit.
like, let's calm down. Let's have a little calming circle.
Well, and she, Mrs. Calloway, it's clear that she settles all disputes. And at one point, the piglets and Jeb, the goat, are kind of getting into it. And this is where you see Grace's personality trying to calm everyone down, have everyone relax. And that kind of happens throughout. And she's kind of aloof. She's kind of in her own little world,
right?
I would say, a little bit.
So Maggie comes up with the idea
for the Chugwater County Fair.
Yes, that they're gonna.
And we both said we loved
Chugwater's a great,
such a good name.
What did I name? So I was on Nuka World DLC when I worked on Fallout 4, and Dry Gulch something was the name. Like, I spent so much time sitting there because there's a section of it that was the Western section.
Yes,
and I had such a hard time coming up with a name that sounded Western.
That didn't exist.
Rock Ridge from Blazing Saddles or anything like that. And man, if I'd thought of Chugwater, I would have been so happy.
Yeah, it would have already existed, so would you have used it anyway?
No, probably not.
Yeah, but it is a really good name.
I'm always out the lookout for good names of things.
Yeah.
So she suggests that she's like, we could all get blue ribbons. It'll be no big deal.
It's 2 weeks away.
It's 2 weeks away. Let's go into town and we'll convince that horse, the sheriff's horse, to give us a little bit of extra time.
Yeah.
Because it's supposed to happen in 3 days.
Mm-hmm. And she's basically like, we've got a farm to save. We've got to do this. So she talks Mrs. Calloway and Grace. Calloway refuses to go. So at first it's just going to be Maggie and Grace. And then Calloway realizes they need somebody who is like very level-headed to
chicks
keep them out of trouble.
Make her feel bad. They guilt her. So when they're walking, that's when we discover that Grace is tone deaf, which will come.
Yes, and she's singing She'll Be Coming Around the Mountain, and whoo boy, but we both mentioned how impressive, especially because the song she sings She'll Be Coming Around the Mountain, and later on she sings the actual song Home on the Range. And those are melodies that you grew up with. So they're melodies that inherently we know them. Even if you don't know the words, you know the melodies to each of those songs. And so
Jennifer Tilly does a really good job.
Yeah, I think it's really difficult. It's really difficult to sing those songs off key because you know the melodies, and she does a fantastic job at that.
I feel like when other actors do it, they just hit different notes, but I don't know. It's the best tone deaf acting.
Yeah,
maybe
she
because Jennifer Tilly might be actually tone deaf.
I don't know, but it was really good. But then the format changes, so we get the bold bars on the top and the bottom.
It becomes more of a widescreen, like the aspect ratio changes.
Yeah, because Mrs. Calloway, as they're talking about Buck, she's like, he's a horse legend in his own mind. And so then we get to see his own mind. And so it's this whole sequence of him being the hero in his Western. And you realize he's kind of daydreaming. And so then we meet, there's a dog with the sheriff as well. And so we meet him and kind of what Buck's life is really like as opposed to what he wants it to be like. And when the cows all walk into town, they're so startled by all the sounds in town. They're so different than, I guess, all the sounds on the farm. And so they get spooked, and this is where they end up in like a showgirl stagecoach performance, like a saloon with a stage. And that's where Ann Richards, she's like the head woman.
madam.
Yeah.
Look like they don't insinuate that she is a prostitute.
The head showgirl or the head woman running the show.
Yes, but if in another Western, clearly she is the head madam of the saloon.
Yeah, and so a whole nother physical sequence happens, which I think is really funny. And she kicks the cows out. And so then they run into Buck, and he says, no, you've got 3 days to pay the full amount. Like, there's no extending this. It's 3 days or nothing. And then all of a sudden, everything gets dark. These storm clouds roll in, and it's all this dust. And this is where we see Rico. And Buck idolizes Rico. Rico is the hero because he's the bounty hunter. He's like the outlaw, but not the outlaw. He kind of like straddles that line. He turns in a bounty to the sheriff, and the sheriff says, well, we've only got one left, and it's Slim.
Voiced by my former co-worker, Charles Dennis, who worked with me on Skyrim as the voice of Odahviing the dragon.
Which is exciting, yeah. So he's kind of this mysterious character, very sleek, very, what you think of when you think of like a Western bounty hunter.
Yeah, he's Clint Eastwood. He's the man with no name.
Oh,
yeah.
There you go. Yeah, I didn't think about that. So Maggie, this is when she makes the connection that Slim is the same amount for a reward that they need to pay. And Maggie's got a real revenge bone to pick with Slim because of what happened to her ranch, because of what happened to Dixon Ranch. So she wants the 3 cows, she wants them to go get Slim before Rico can make it to capture him. So that's kind of what sets them off on this adventure. Rico takes Buck, he needs a horse, and Buck is basically sobbing, excited, cannot wait to be the horse of Rico.
Yeah, every time he gets like a saddle on him or something, he thinks of Rico, there's like tears in his eyes.
Yeah. And so this is when the cows go off on their way. Rico goes off with Buck. And this is when Grace is singing Home on the Range, also off tune. Whew. This is also when they go past the Dixon farm. And so the other 2 cows kind of find out more of Maggie's story.
Yeah.
And we see that the whole farm is being auctioned off. And so then we approach a cattle drive. Basically, Maggie says, if we get to a cattle drive, that's where we're going to find Slim because he's going to be taking more cattle. So I don't know if you want to mention it here about who they hitch a ride with.
Oh, it's with a Mandarin Chinese man who speaks Mandarin. And I like that, they do a good thing of like not showing the typical, like, he's a chuck wagon cook. Which there was part of me that was kind of excited to see. I like chuck wagons. Tara took me to a chuck wagon cookout for a birthday one time.
Yeah, it was a cook-off.
And I wanted to see some Chinese chuck wagon cooking. I was excited for that. But B, I like that he wasn't, the typical, like, I feel like the easy thing to do in this is show them as a railroad worker because, Chinese immigrants in the 1800s were treated horribly. And that's kind of just how they're represented. And
he was really excited because the sheriff thinks thinks it's his cows. And
ties into the back and he goes, oh, wow, free cows. What a country.
Yeah. And so
Mandarin.
In Mandarin. And that's the only time we see him for the most part,
He
right?
does it one more time when Grace is singing. He goes, oh, God, no wonder they were free.
Oh, I missed that. That's funny. So that's when Home on the Range happens and all of that. They go past Dixon Farm. And so they approach the cattle drive and all the longhorns, all the male cows, what are male cows called?
Bulls
are all, I don't know, can I say this on the pod? They're all
they're all excited to see Lady
yeah,
cows,
okay, I guess you're gonna have to quack that out.
Let's say but they're all very like
They're enthusiastic. They're very
yeah.
enthusiastic. They're not very bright, but they're very enthusiastic. And they're hitting on all three of the cows. Yeah, they are cattle. Oh my God, I didn't even put that together.
Call. But that's
100% what they're doing.
They're dopes.
Yeah, and Maggie calls them lover bulls at one point.
It's the situation is Maggie and Mrs. Calloway don't want to. I mean, Mrs. Calloway doesn't because she's married. I don't know where Mr. Calloway is.
Oh, that's a good point.
Is it Miss Calloway? I think it's Mrs.
I can't remember now. We'll have to go back and look at that.
I always think it's funny to give a pet or an animal a title of like Sir something or whatever. Yeah. But I did like, and then Grace is kind of like not like hitting on them, but she's just like, oh, they seem nice.
She's
like,
very nice to them and enjoying talking with them. And this is when we're introduced to Slim. I really enjoyed his song a lot. I really liked it a lot because it's dark and scary. You think something sinister is going to happen with how he captures the cows. And I think you mentioned this at the top.
They throw him something that looks like a rifle. And then the reveal, because he's singing this song, and then all of a sudden he goes into the yodeling, is he turns it another way, and it's clearly a guitar.
And then all the colors get very vibrant. He's got a sparkly kind of rodeo outfit on.
Well, he looks like a yodeling cowboy, like that kind
like
of
a Roy Rogers style.
He's got fringe. He's and it switches to that.
And it's really great. And so his song, do you know the name of his song?
The yodel song? I don't know. I can look it up.
Yeah, if you could look it up just because it's so good, but it's all bright colors. And we realize that when he yodels, all the cows are kind of hypnotized and he can basically take them wherever they go. And
the song is of course titled Yodel-adle-eedle-idle-oo.
That's great. I love it. And I loved the song. I thought it was a really good song. You see how all the cows are hypnotized, and then you see this twist that Grace is not affected because she's tone deaf. And she thinks she has perfect pitch.
It's anyone with less than perfect pitch is
because they're like, his singing it transfixed me, and I don't know. I thought I was dreaming, and the other two cows are describing what they felt, and Grace is just like, I didn't think he was that good.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's such a good bit.
This scene has a little bit when the cows start changing colors. It has a little bit of a Pink Elephants on Parade.
Yeah, they zoom out and you see, hundreds of cows all moving in different directions, all these bright colors changing. It's a real show-stopping number, I think. And so then Rico catches up with the cattle herd, and at this point, all the cattle have disappeared.
Yes.
Because Slim has taken them all as he sings. And this is when he winds up leaving Buck behind because he's skittish of cows, because he's getting frustrated with the three lady cows.
Yes, he's doing something. He's like, gets too skittish about cows. He takes another horse who has a very famous voice that we'll get to in a little bit.
And Grace is really sweet. She tries to invite Buck along with, the other two cows, Mrs. Calloway and Maggie, don't really want anything to do with Buck. But Grace basically does an olive branch and is like, you need to calm your temper down, but we'd love to have you join us. And he, of course, loses his temper and then decides he's going to catch Slim on his own and prove to Rico that, he's a good horse.
So now it's Rico takes off first on his new horse.
Yes.
Then Buck, and then the bovine bounty hunters.
Yes. And so we find out that Slim's kind of evil plan is he's buying up all the land to own the territory.
Yes. Earlier when they go by the Dixon farm, they show the sale and it's sold to someone named Yancey Odell.
Yes.
Which we realize is
why
Odell.
Yodel. It's so good. I love it.
But when he did that, I was like, that's Randy Quaid's voice. I'm like, that's got to be Slim. That's his deal. So,
I didn't catch it because it's kind of quick. So you can catch it depending on if you focus in on that. And he has a disguise. And the Willie brothers, his sidekick, his henchmen,
his nephews
are
idiots.
They are dumb as rocks. And they are, every time he puts on the disguise, they don't know who he is.
Are you?
Yeah. And so that's a whole running bit. But he realizes one of his nephews always sits in the same spot in front of the map. And he realizes that when his nephew moves, the shape of little piece of heaven, is the same shape as his nephew's head.
Which I thought was a really funny little bit.
And
I legitimately laughed at this movie. I'm going to make a really big claim right here that Madeline's going to hate. I'd watch this again before I watch the Aristocats. I'll say that.
Yeah, I think it has... I don't know. I think it plays to the things we enjoy.
Yes.
I think that's part of it.
Yes,
we love Westerns. We live out here in Texas, so there were some nods to Texas that we really enjoyed.
I think it's a better movie than the Aristocats. Boom. Boom. I said it.
Bone to pick, Madeline. Call us. So we realize that that's his master plan. He's basically taking revenge, and he kind of explains it. It's kind of a quick explanation.
It's a
like nobody realized his talents when he worked on all these different ranches, so now he's like getting back at them all this way. It's not a very like solid revenge, if you ask me. I think he's kind of going overboard, but that's fine. So then we see that the cows are following Buck. They're following his like hoof prints, right? And they say they're on the scent, but they're really following him. And then he leads them astray by like marking all these prints all over the place. He runs all around, and then a flash flood comes in. Mm-hmm. So this big storm flows in. The cows all fight with one another. This is where Mrs. Calloway's like, "That's it. We're going back home. This was foolish. Like, why did we do this?" And Maggie says, "Fine, I'll leave on my own. You two can go your own way in the morning." And this is when the Bonnie Raitt song,
Will the Sun Ever Shine Again? Which unfortunately on the Home on the Range soundtrack, they don't have the Katie Lang or the Bonnie Raitt songs.
Oh my gosh, they're both I thought were really good songs.
Which is kind of a bummer.
The Bonnie Raitt, or the Katie Lang song is the one when we meet all the farm
Little
animals.
Patch of Heaven.
Yeah. The Bonnie Raitt song was beautiful, and it does slow down the film a little bit. We were talking about it before we record it, but like all tensions are high. Like we're following all these characters along. Pearl is packing up the farm. She doesn't know where the cows are. She's really upset and worried about them. The cows are kind of fighting with one another, and they're kind of in a desperate situation. Mm-hmm. Buck is on his own, and I think it fits. I don't know. What did you feel? Did you feel it fit?
I mean, it's a slowdown a little bit. I feel like this is the scene. I think they were a little nervous about having this type of scene in Emperor's New Groove, because when they had this scene where everything was at its lowest point is when like Cusco came in and was like, "Okay, this movie's about me, not him, me."
Yeah,
they're like, "This is me. This is," they kind of release the tension, and I think that works a little better. It's a slowdown in a movie that's otherwise pretty madcap. It's hard for me to say they could have taken it out because it's a really good song.
And I think it does progress the story in the sense we see where all the characters are and their desperation.
Yeah.
All characters are in kind of desperate situations in this song.
I will say it's a short song. It's not like it doesn't overstay its welcome.
Yeah.
But it's the words, especially knowing the idea of like this is us dealing with our feelings post 9/11, like really I think affects that song.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Mm-hmm. So the cows wake up, they can't find Grace, and they realize that she's made friends with the jackrabbit, who's Lucky Jack. So he comes back and he's gotten them food, and he basically tells them, "Oh, I know where Slim is." Yeah. And he's at Echo Mine, and I can take you there. So now they have, Grace calls him a shaman. She calls him something else at one point, but basically he's their savior, essentially. Like they had no food, they had no water. Now they have all these things, and now they have a way to get to Slim.
Yes, and then there's this thing where it's like Calloway, they're like, Maggie's like, you guys help me find him, and then I'll leave the farm.
Yeah, she's like, you want to buy the farm back, I want revenge for my farm. Together we can capture Slim, no problem, and then we'll go our separate ways.
The plotty stuff in this is kind of hit or miss, but like the comedy is pretty good. Like,
so then there's a song while following Lucky Jack.
They just redo
that
Home on the
Range song again. Yeah, I didn't write it down, I just wrote it. And then we get introduced to Steve Buscemi's character.
Yes, Mr. Weasley or Wesley.
Yes. Yeah. And he's very like short man, especially compared to how big Slim is.
If you're worried that you wouldn't be able to tell which character is played by Steve Buscemi based on the way their face looks, don't worry.
And the way they sound, and the minute you hear him talk.
Like for some reason you're watching it on mute and you're like, how will I know which one's Steve Buscemi? You'll know.
So we realize he is a black market cattleman, essentially. Yes. He's going to come in. He knows all this cattle is stolen. He's going to come in and buy 5,000 cows from Slim. So that's what's giving Slim the money. So basically, Slim is stealing these cows, selling them, and with the money, then he's buying the farms he stole them from.
Yes.
And so this is where we also get more introduced to Slim's. He does not ride a horse. He rides a buffalo, which I think is kind of a fun
a bison,
twist.
or
a
you
bison.
have to say an American buffalo
Excuse
or a
me.
bison.
He rides a bison.
Apologies to all our bison listeners.
I
out there.
apologize. He rides a bison. But I like that twist that he doesn't ride a horse. And
I love any bit where somebody rides something that's not a horse.
yeah,
I
and
don't know why.
it like the way that they're both animated, like they fit really well together,
Yeah.
I think. And so his name is Junior. And we find out that he's kind of like the bouncer. Like, he's not going to let anybody in.
Yeah, because it's Cuba Gooding Jr. standing up there trying to convince him, like, come on, I'm supposed to be in there. It's definitely a scene from a club.
Yeah.
And then the cows walk up, and he's like, ladies, come on in. And he's like, well, I'm with them, you know.
Yeah. And he's like, well, they're cows. They can go in. He's like, well, what about the jackrabbit? He's like, clearly they were with the cows.
Yeah.
Or he was with the cows. And so then it's a whole physical sequence. So this is something you really...
Well, real quick, they explain the plan, because I want to get this part in, where they explain the plan, and then Grace goes, come on, you guys can't get the plan? Like, it's blah, 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 blah. And that's when she starts showing up as, like, it turns out she's not quite as flighty as you think she is. She's very
Or, like,
smart in
when
this
she's
plan.
determined or
Yes.
focused, she can, like, really, like, do the task at
Because,
hand.
spoiler alert, Grace is the real hero of this movie, we
Yes.
find by the end.
Yeah.
And she, like, gets cotton off of his tail and puts it in their ears so they won't hear him yodel and stuff like that.
And so, yeah, so there's this whole physical sequence that it's really better if you just watch it, but
Yes.
it's them capturing Slim. You're going through this whole mine, all the cows, they realize they're at 997, so they're missing three because they had counted them. So it's this whole big thing, and they wind up capturing Slim, and... At one point, Buck has him. At one point, Rico has him. At one point, like, all of the characters kind of all meet up here at the mine.
It's a mine cart chase. It's a train. They get to the train.
This is where Junior falls down. It is an elevator shaft. He falls down
Yes.
that, but we find out he's still around because we see him later on in the film.
Yes.
And it all culminates with them crashing into the train because Steve Buscemi's character is like, well, while this is all happening, I'm going to just take my money and the cows and leave on this train.
Right.
And so everybody all crashes together into the train. And then we find out a bigger twist. Now, this is a spoiler, so if you don't want to be spoiler, I guess skip ahead. But I enjoyed this twist.
I was like,
it's a Western.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of times there is a twist in a Western.
Well, because the character... So the twist is Rico's working on the side for
Slim.
And
yeah.
then Rico
He's covering
seems
his
like
tracks.
But Rico, even from the beginning, like I was talking about how this felt like a very like 10-star like Western, good guys are good guys and bad guys are bad guys. And Rico didn't fit that. Rico felt more like the 70s, the later spaghetti westerns where it's like the good guy seems kind of bad,
Yeah.
and it turns out he is a bad guy, and that like blows Buck's mind.
Yeah, and he doesn't know what to do now
Yes.
because he's been idolizing Rico and thinking Rico's the hero. And he says later on in the film, I now know who the real heroes are when he goes to help the cows.
So Slim takes the money, runs off to go buy a little patch of heaven. And then Buck has a change of heart and goes, no, we're going to save the cows. Goes back, throws Slim off.
This is when we hear, we didn't talk about the famous horse voice. That was earlier on.
Oh, when he convinces the other horse to leave, it's Patrick Warburton. It's Kronk.
Yes.
And
such
that
a
was a
quick
surprise.
couple lines,
Like,
but it was exciting.
We
to hear
both
his
like.
voice.
I was looking at it's so buried deep in the IMDb page that I missed it looking at the other voices.
Mm-hmm.
So when it happened, we both went, "Is that Kronk?"
Yeah,
Is that
yeah.
Kronk?
And so that's like before this whole chase scene happens.
Right.
He runs the other horse away so he can be Rico's horse again.
Yes.
But yeah, so then everybody goes their separate ways. So and they do beat up Rico. Slim leaves.
They don't really go their separate ways. Do you mind if I take the reins for a little bit?
Go ahead.
As in a horse metaphor.
Yes, take the reins.
He goes back and he helps the ladies get loose. I think he kicks Wesley. We were thinking about what happened to him.
Yeah.
And then he's bucking around with Rico on his back, and Maggie takes Calloway's hat, throws it outside, so that makes Calloway like freak out and break the door because she doesn't like when her hat's taken off.
They're trapped in the train.
They're trapped in the train. They get out. And then they're like, well, how are we going to catch up with him? They capture the Willies. They capture Rico. They
capture everyone but Slim.
And they go, how are we going to catch up to Slim? And that's when Calloway's like, we're going to take this train. We've done all this other silly stuff. Why can't we drive a train? Which is kind of like everyone in the theater going, yeah, why can't you drive this train?
Yeah, she's like, we did all these things we didn't think we could do because of you, Maggie. We can do this.
Yes. So indeed they do drive a train.
Yes.
With the jackrabbit and the horse. They have another train coming at them. Buck and Lucky Jack run ahead, change the thing. So now it's just the cows, and they are headed. The train conveniently goes right past Little Patch of Heaven.
They mentioned that at some point, yeah. And so the train goes off the tracks, and they basically run into the farm. And I was thinking when that happened, I was like, poor Pearl's gonna have to repair that whole fence.
Your farm is saved. There's a train in the middle. Like, that's not easy to get that train out of there.
Yeah,
you gotta take it apart.
And so they wind up.
There's no cranes in the Wild West.
It was right as Yancey Odell is about to sign the deed. And when everything happens, all this commotion, he ends up in the train chimney? What do you call that?
Steam pipe, I guess, or chimney.
Yeah.
It's all, because there's one little part about this that I liked, and that's that all the animals like take turns beating up on him. Because he pulls a gun on the cows.
Yes, that's
and then
right.
all the, like the pig and
pigs
Jeb and everybody kind of takes turns on him. So then he's stuck in there and he's about to yodel, and Grace like karate kicks a cowbell into his mouth.
Yeah, because the other two cows start to get mesmerized.
And it's so funny because it is like he starts to yodel. It's like, boy.
Yeah,
it's
their
like
eyes
their
get
eyes,
like crazy
it's
colors.
So funny. It's like the
good.
funniest part of the thing. And then that's the end.
They reveal because his disguise comes off.
Yes.
And
they
reveal that's when everyone realizes who he is. The sheriff captures him.
It's a very Clark Kent situation where it's like, no one else is shaped like this guy.
Yeah. And so they send him off to jail, and then the farm, it's kind of like a happily ever after. Like, all the characters, the sheriff is there, Buck is there with the dog, like everybody's on the farm, and then we realize that they all went to the fair, and all the animals come back with blue ribbons.
Yes.
They all come back with first place. The chicks
come back, and they're so small you can't see them behind the blue ribbons.
Yeah, and so all three of the cows have blue ribbons, and it's just they all kind of dance. And then the end, there's that dancing sequence. The male cows, the bulls come back.
And then like, I guess the insinuation is that Mrs. Calloway gets together with Junior. Like, because they pair up in the dance. Oh, yeah,
they do pair up in the dance. Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe Junior is Mr. Calloway. It's Junior Calloway.
Maybe. And so, and it just kind of ends like with a little like happy little dance scene, and the farm is saved, and they save the day.
We always ask our questions at the end of an episode, so here we go. How was the princess? So I think the princesses in this are Maggie, Mrs. Calloway, and Grace.
I think we've kind of talked about all three of them. Maggie's a very strong personality. It's similar to Roseanne Barr, I think, in person as far as that goes.
In a good way.
In a good way, yeah. But like that strong, like female, like I'm not going to take no for an answer kind of a personality. Mrs. Calloway is kind of the older, again, very much like who voices her character, kind of the wiser cow, but also one who's hesitant for adventure. And then Grace is like the happy-go-lucky, up for anything, and who kind of turns out to save the day. Grace was my favorite out of the three, but I enjoyed them as a threesome as well as each of them individually.
I think those three characters worked really well together. How was the prince? Buck, I guess, was the prince?
I guess,
I really didn't like Buck. Not as a character, but I was just kind of annoyed by his, like... I mean, he has a good turn at the end. Like, you have to kind of be that way.
You have to go through it.
Yeah, by the end, I'm like, oh, I like Buck. Like,
yeah, it was a little heavy-handed, but I think you needed that to know, because he wouldn't have just helped the cows without the turn of Rico, I don't think.
He didn't have go-away heat. I was just kind of like, man, I wish he wasn't such a, like... I was almost like, is he also a villain?
He was kind of an intense personality.
Yeah, he was an antagonistic force throughout a lot of it. So I was kind of, but I did like him. Sidekicks and henchmen. Let's talk about the Willies. Like, I loved the voice, Uncle Slam. And like, mostly because I can do it.
They literally were one person, even though there were three of them. They were three of the same person.
I thought I liked their design. I liked how you never saw their eyes. They had that big old chin.
One was like always tuning that banjo, and the strings were always snapping.
Yeah,
it was like...
they were just like, It was very 1970s Disney, like, bad guys. Like, this movie, while it didn't feel antiquated in that there were, like, old-fashioned ways of doing things, like, I think there was, like, this felt like an idea that could have fit into, like, the 70s Disney
I
era.
mean, we talked about Pecos Bill. It has a very similar feel
Yeah.
to Pecos Bill in that regard. As far as, like, the other animals, I liked Lucky Jack a lot. And I enjoyed all the other animals on the farm.
Yeah.
I think they were fun.
Yeah. Favorite musical number? I think we're both got the same answer.
Yeah, the
Yodel song.
The Yodel song. Yeah, this is my absolute favorite. I really like Little Patch of Heaven.
I'm shocked that I liked every song.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Like, I thought I'm like, there are going to be some bad songs in this. And I was like, no, this is going to be, when we play Villainous or something, we have Disney music playing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm ready to put some of those
songs added to it. Yeah. I really liked Little Patch of Heaven, but the creativity behind the Yodel song, the fact that that's how he hypnotizes the cows, how it becomes this Western showy, singing cowboy.
Yes.
Everything about it is why that song wins for me over Little Patch of Heaven.
I think the musical number is the best. Like, the video and everything that goes into it. Like, the song, I think all the songs are pretty close when it comes to, like, just listening to the song.
Yeah.
But that musical number was
it was
good.
a show-stopping number, I feel like, in the movie.
Does it hold up? Let's talk a little bit about female character agency, because this is three independent cows
and
getting it done.
Pearl is a woman a farm owner.
Yes.
All on her own.
She feels a little bit like a progressive version of the widow Tweed.
Yes, and actually has a first name. Yes. But no, I liked that she was kind of strong and set in her ways too. She wasn't going to compromise anything. If she had to pack up and leave, so be it. But she wasn't going to sell her family off. She wasn't going to sell her animals.
Right.
Off to, like, keep her land. She was a strong female character as well. I think as far as female characters go, we had some really good examples of very different women personalities.
And it was like a fun and none of it felt like it wasn't like the Xena warrior princess, like, this is how we show it. Like, it didn't feel like it felt like so they had some women writers on here.
Okay.
So that it felt like women writing women, which I think feels different than men writing strong women.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I like strong women written by men. I don't think men can necessarily not write strong women, but it has a different feel to it, I think, especially at this time period.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Drinking, smoking.
Well, they're in the saloon for a little bit, so maybe it's in there.
Ethnic representation. I mean, it's a pretty white cast. Cuba Gooding Jr. is in it. I mean, it's mostly animals, and I don't think there's any. There were some a couple characters of color, but their background. I like the representation of the Mandarin Chinese man. But yeah, I mean, not perfect, but I was okay with it, but I'm also a white guy, so I'm pretty much okay with 95% of media out there. So what you let us know what you think. Guns and firearms, they pull a couple guns. There's no guns fired. Did someone fire a gun at one point when they're doing? They might fire a gun in the air.
Yeah, I can't recall.
Which is why they get scared or something like that. But for a Western, it felt very gun-like.
And also even that Western standoff moment between Slim and the cows, when they zoom in on his hand.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a gun there, whereas in a Western, you would have a gun in your hand.
Right.
There.
Yeah.
So, I liked that moment a lot, too.
So now it's time for the infallible scientific villain rating.
All right.
So again, if you haven't, I kind of want to start kind of saying this real quick to our audience, but this is a 7-point ranking, 1 to 5, with 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest. Where it is done. Scientists in Switzerland have given us this ranking. There's no way. It's like, how they have somewhere the piece of metal that weighs exactly 1 gram, and it's like the gram that they do everything.
Yeah.
Those are the same scientists who gave us this. There's no way that this could possibly be wrong. So here we go. Tara, let's go with frightening.
I didn't think he was very scary. I think when he's introduced, there's like that eerie scariness, but I never felt that the animals were threatened because He just sells
Yes.
them off. Like, he's not out to...
He's a comedy villain. He's not
Yeah,
really
he's not really out to, like, seriously injure anyone.
There was a scene where he got real mad that seemed a little, so I think I might give him a 2.
I'll give him a 2.
You don't have to give him a 2.
Well, no, because I think that opening, before he jumps into his, like, yodeling song, it has a, you're not sure what he's going to do, right? And so I'll give him a 2 for that. And everyone talking about him. Everyone else is feared by him. Like,
Right.
he's feared by everyone else. So I'll give him a 2 for that.
Absolutely. Funny. I think the movie's funny. I don't think like all of his funny points are funneled into his song.
His song and his henchmen. His
Yes.
henchmen have a little bit more of the comedic part. I don't think he does.
I'm willing to give him a 3.
Yeah, I was thinking around a 3 as well. I think because he was voiced by Randy Quaid, I think I expected him to be funnier. I didn't mind that he wasn't, but I think I just expected like more bits.
Yes. Fierce. So I want to give him points for the sparkledy outfit.
That outfit is great.
The outfit is great. The rest of the movie, I wouldn't call him fierce.
No. I'm between a 2 and a 3.
I'm exactly the same. Do you want to? I'll give him a 2. You give him a 3.
Sure.
Now we're gaming the system.
We are gaming the system.
We're playing
with that
Moneyball
one.
with
Yeah.
with this, but that's fine. The scientists in Switzerland have taken that into account.
Mm-hmm.
Up next is effective. I will say, I think he's one of the more effective villains in his.
He has
plot.
every ranch. He is basically owns the territory minus
Right, and
little patch of
I
heaven.
literally at the end went, so wait, does he still get to keep every other piece of land?
Because he goes to jail. He doesn't die.
Yeah.
Or he goes to jail. So I guess the bank takes all that land.
I guess, but that's a question we're left with as an audience.
Yeah.
And again, as I said earlier, then the bank owns most of the land, and that is not the country the founding
boy.
fathers intended.
But also, not only does he buy up all the land, but he successfully puts a lot of people out of business, which was his revenge plan.
Well, and all those cows that they just let loose, do they go back? There's
997 cows that are just running wild.
And is that just that group? Because he had the money to buy all the places earlier, so the implication seems to be there's all these other cows that he sold. What happened to them?
They probably went off.
Home on the Range has some questions to answer.
Yes.
Home on the Range 2 would have explained all this.
I do think he's very effective, though. I think
he's a 4.
Yeah. I mean, he almost completes his revenge plan to a T. I feel like he might be a 5 under how we...
Here's the thing. I think his plan...
is not great.
Is not necessarily great. I
that's
also
true.
think, his effectiveness as a villain is specifically towards cows.
That's
true. His
That's
superpower.
True. All right, yeah.
So I don't know.
I'll
I
give
think
him
a 4. I think
All
a
right.
4. Design, boy, I like that sparkly shirt, but
I like the design of him. He's very intimidating. He's a very round, tall, big man. He's very imposing.
yes, I like that he's big and his name's Slim.
Yeah. I also and it's Alameda.
Alameda Slim.
Yeah. I like him with the buffalo. I think you have to include Junior in his design because that's kind of who he's with a lot of the time, or no?
I don't know that I would. You're
Oh.
you're welcome to do that if you want.
like
So
Junior.
what number do you think you'd give him for design?
I'm between a 3 and a 4.
I think I'm going to give him a 3. So
And what's your reasoning?
I think he's an interesting. I didn't like his jowls. There's some shots of him that I just didn't like. Not that it was go away heat or anything like that. It was just visually unpleasing to me.
Okay. I didn't have that. I'll give him a 3. I wasn't super wowed, and I feel like that's more what my 4
Yeah,
and 5s
I
are,
think
so.
he's not bad.
But I
think
did
he's-
enjoy. There were some things I enjoyed about how they designed him.
Go away heat. He didn't really have any from me.
No, I actually wanted to hear him yodel more.
Yeah. And,
So I'm gonna give him a 1 for Go Away Heat.
And I'm also going to give him a 1 for Yes Factor, just because I didn't know anything.
I knew nothing about him, but on a rewatch, he would have a higher yes factor because I love his song.
I think
I'd
his
be
song
excited
would
for
have
the
a high
song.
one. Yeah. But I think on this one, I'm going to give him a 1.
Yeah, I am too.
I will say I got a little excited whenever he was about to yodel, but I just don't think that factors into Yes Factor.
Yeah.
I also don't want to overrate this villain because we were so excited for how this movie turned
Turned out for us. Yeah, no, I get that. So what is he?
He has a 16.5.
Okay.
So he is tied for what I believe is 40th place.
Oh.
With Honest John from Pinocchio and Murloc the Magician from DuckTales.
Okay. He's one that I think was kind of hard to rank. I almost feel like he should be a little bit higher.
Well,
but...
a little bit higher would put him in what I think would be a little bit more of an appropriate place, but he's right around the Sheriff of Nottingham.
Oh, yeah. I would say that that's a little bit more appropriate.
He's about a half a point below.
Got it. Okay.
So that's the only thing.
All right. I'm okay with that.
Okay, so I guess, 16.5, he's tied for 40th. We have just one question left, and that's, do we add it to the collection or do we lock it in the vault?
I'd add it to the collection.
Yeah, I think it's also kind of a this is how Texan I am. I like this universally disliked.
Here's the thing. I think if you're a fan of Westerns, I think they used a lot of influences from Westerns, and you know way more than I do. And even from what I know, I picked up quite a bit. And so I think that connection for us was strong, not just because we live in Texas, but we also like that media. We like that genre of film. So I think I think they did a Western justice. I really do. I think they really gave a lot of good nods to Western films and Western media. So in that regard, I think they were successful. I do understand why it didn't do well. I understand maybe why audiences didn't gravitate to it, and it was just so different. Again, we haven't done Brother Bear yet, but it's so drastically different from Treasure Planet. Treasure Planet was like they're swinging for the fences in a lot of different ways with a lot of different genres.
We talked about how Treasure Planet was so earnest.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so not too over serious, but it's just very this is a movie about adventure. And this one's this is a movie about cows and a Western.
Well,
and
it's
funny.
an adventure movie, but it's kind of a cornball.
Yes.
comedy.
I will say, I think if you liked Emperor's New Groove, I don't think this is as funny and as good as Emperor's New Groove, but I think it's in the same vein of that sort of Disney movie.
I think you would enjoy it. And I also think, give it a go. I mean, worst comes to worst, you turn it off, right?
Yeah.
If you don't care for it, just
if
turn it off.
you got Disney Plus, you're already paying for it.
Yeah,
so.
but if you've not seen it, I would say give it a try. I think it was critically, it did not do well, and it may have steered a lot of people away from watching it. I know it did me. I was like, well, why should I ever check this one out? No one ever has anything good to say about it, and now I have plenty of good things to say about it.
I liked it. Well, guys, this one was a surprise, and hopefully the next one, Chicken Little, will also be as much of a surprise. We will see you then. Until then, please remember to rate, review, subscribe, and tell a friend about our little podcast. It really helps you out. But we will see you.
Helps us out.
Well, it also helps you out. It makes you feel good.
I guess that's true.
It gives you a little sense of, but we will see you next time for Chicken Little.
All right, take care, listeners. Thanks for listening to Tara and Ryan's Princess Diaries.
If you want to tell us your favorite Disney villain and why it's guest on, send us an email at trprincessdiaries@gmail.com.
Or you can send a tweet about how great Maleficent is to @TRPDiaries.
Check out our Facebook group by searching for Tara and Ryan's Princess Diaries.
Tara and Ryan's Princess Diaries are available on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Overcast, and many more.
Wherever you hear us, please be our knight in shining armor and give us a 5-star review.
Thanks again, and until next time, remember to always live happily ever after.